let's be real for a second. For most of us, just the word negotiation is enough to make your stomach do a little flip, right? Whether you're trying to buy a car, ask for a raise, or heck, just get your kids to clean their room, it can feel like you're walking into a fight you're probably going to lose. But what if? What if you could walk into any of those situations feeling not dread, but totally calm and confident because you have a plan? So, let's kick this off with a story. The author of the book we're looking at, a guy who does this for a living, tells this story about a huge negotiation he had. He walked in just full of confidence, thinking he could just charm his way through it. He didn't do any real prep, and, well, you can see how that went. It was a complete disaster. He got played, he was embarrassed, and it actually soured that business relationship for years to come. I mean, that feeling of being completely outmaneuvered, of walking away knowing you left money or just a huge opportunity sitting right there on the table, we've all been there. It is that sinking feeling in your gut that just screams, there has to be a better way. And the good news is, there is. Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to pinpoint the biggest mistake amateurs make. Then, we'll figure out what kind of game you're actually playing. After that, I'm going to show you this incredibly powerful tool, a negotiation map. Then, we'll get into reading the other person, and finally, we'll wrap it all up with a real secret weapon, preparation. All right, first things first, let's talk about the number one reason negotiations go sideways before they even start. And that is relying on your personality instead of a process. The author has a great term for this. He calls it the bias and self-assessment. And it's such a common trap. We think, hey, I'm a smart person, I'm good with people, I can just wing it. But look at the difference here. That misguided confidence on the left, it's a direct path to getting outplayed. Because you can bet the professional on the other side is not winging it. The real control, the actual power, comes from that informed preparation on the right. So how do we actually make that leap from amateur to pro? Well, it all starts with asking one single fundamental question, a question most of us never even think to ask before we jump in. And this lays it out perfectly. There are really only two games you can be playing. Are you value claiming or are you value creating? Value claiming is basically a fight over a fixed pie. Think about a lawyer negotiating a settlement. Every single dollar they get for their client is a dollar the other side loses. It's win-lose. But so many other negotiations are about value creating. This is where you actually work together to make the whole pie bigger for everybody. Like a parent and a kid figuring out chores and allowance, the goal isn't for one person to win. It's to find a system that makes life better for both of you. And here's why this is so critical. You absolutely have to decide which game you're in before you make a single move. Is this just a one-off deal where your only goal is to get as much as you can? Or is this part of a bigger, long-term relationship where you need to build trust? Because the answer to that question changes your entire strategy. Okay, so you know what game you're in. Now you need a way to see the landscape clearly. And this is where we get to what might be the most powerful, practical tool for any negotiator. We have this image in our heads of a great negotiator, right? Someone loud, aggressive, pounding the table. But honestly, that's just a myth from the movies. Their real secret, the thing that gives you an almost unfair advantage, is having a map. A simple framework that tells you exactly where you are, who has the power, and the best way forward. And this is it, the negotiation map. And what's so brilliant about this is how simple it is. It's built on just two questions. First, along the bottom axis, how much does this deal really matter to you? And second, on the vertical axis, how many other options do you have? That's really it. See, by plotting your answers, you land in one of these four boxes. And that box tells you everything about the power dynamic. If the deal is super important, but you have tons of options, that's leverage. You've got the upper hand. If it's important, but you have very few options, it's strategic. Power is balanced, so you have to collaborate. If it's a low-stakes deal in a tough market, that's critical. They have the advantage. Knowing which quadrant you're in instantly tells you what your strategy should be. So you've got your map, you know your strategy, but a map doesn't do you much good if you can't read the weather. And in any negotiation, the weather is the person, the human being sitting across from you. I love this analogy from the book. It calls culture the software of the mind. And it's so true. Are you dealing with someone from an individualistic culture where it's all about personal wins, and getting results? Or are you with someone from a collective culture where we, the group, and maintaining harmony are what really matter? Understanding this can be a massive, massive advantage because it tells you what actually motivates them. Now, beyond just culture, you have to be able to spot the actual tactics people use. Let's run through a few quick ones. First up, the Columbo tactic. You know from the old TV show. You play a little dumb, act confused, ask simple questions. Oh, just one more thing. It's a brilliant way to get people to lower their guard and tell you things they shouldn't. Then you've got something way more high stakes, brinkmanship. This is where you push things right to the absolute edge, making the other side genuinely believe you're willing to walk away and let the whole thing fall apart. It's super risky, but if it works, it's incredibly powerful. And of course, there's the old classic good cop/bad cop. One person on their team is totally aggressive and unreasonable, and then their partner swoops in, seeming all friendly and helpful, offering you a reasonable compromise. Recognizing these plays isn't about being paranoid, it's about not getting manipulated.
All right, let's bring it all together. We've talked about the amateur's biggest mistake, and we've walked through the pro's toolkit. So let's lock in the one thing that really separates the two.
You know, it really all boils down to this. True power in a negotiation doesn't come from being the loudest person in the room. It doesn't come from your job title. It comes from knowledge. It comes from doing your homework when you know the other person probably didn't. So here it is, your new playbook. 4 simple steps to run through before your next big conversation. First, define your goal. Is this a win-lose battle or a win-win collaboration? Second, map the situation. Figure out where you stand and who has the power. Third, read the people. Think about their culture, their motivations. And finally, number 4, prepare relentlessly. That's it. That is the entire journey from amateur to pro. And that really brings us to the end. The real question isn't just about what you learned here today, it's about what you're going to do with it. So think about it for a second. What's the next conversation, the next purchase, the next decision that you're facing that you're now going to map out first? That's all for this explainer. Now go get what you're worth.